Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Automated Advantage. Today we have Eric Whitmore on, who's the founder of Mybizcoaches. Got some amazing insight for businesses, some great anecdotes, and a really fun conversation. So hopefully everybody enjoys it. So hey, everybody, welcome to the Automated Advantage. Today we have Eric Whitmore on. Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and a little bit about your company.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. Great to be here. I'm excited to have our conversation today. I have to preface my introduction with the 25 years of being in the wireless industry. And to be clear, it was paging when I started. So I say wireless, it was paging, and it's the cell phones that we all know and carry today. But I was with a couple of different companies, two of which I helped grow those companies to over 100 million in top line revenue. And I share that because during that period of time, I personally opened 150 retail locations. I managed thousands of people, interviewed probably 10,000 interviews over the course of my career. Managed large teams. I personally was responsible for as much as $50 million in sales on an annualized basis with the teams that I was responsible for. And all of that throughout my career, I've also owned 15 businesses of my own. So many of them I had concurrently while I had a corporate career. I used some of the money that I made. I did quite well for myself and reinvested that and created business opportunities or acquired businesses. Anyway, I think it's relevant for me to share that because as we talk about my biz coaches and what I do today, I think it's important for people to know that I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been in corporate America, so to speak. I've also had my own small business. I've taken advances on a credit card to cover payroll. I know the nightmares that creates. I know how challenging it could be to shut down a business. So I had to do that and take a $2 million haircut. So I know how painful that can be. I also know what it's like to grow and scale a business. I took $2 to $1 million. I took a trucking business in 1 year. I took a trucking business to $6 million and 27 trucks in less than a year, in 11 months. So I know about rapid growth. I know about managing large organizations. I got paid relatively well to run somebody else's business. So I learned a lot from doing that over the years. And so when I sit down with clients today at my biz coaches and help them, what we talk about growing and scaling, we basically say to people, from startup to exit, we can help you identify where you're stuck in that process and help you kind of move from where you are to where you want to go next. And that's kind of what we do today. My role as the CEO of My Biz Coaches, we have 27 coaches that we help different businesses, predominantly service-based businesses. People are really good at what they do, maybe just need a little bit of guidance on how to move their business from where they are to where they want to go.
Yeah, no, that's a great introduction, and that's helpful. I'm familiar with the pager world. When I first started my career, I carried a pager, and I was telling somebody this just not that long ago. I still remember going to Disney World with my kids, and the pager goes off, and I have to find a payphone and go dial the number. My kids are like, "How old are you?" Very old. So yeah,
Yeah, that's funny.
interesting time. So I mean, that's a very it helps kind of frame a lot of. Obviously, we can go in so many different directions, but um, I'm assuming, and based on the fact that you said, "Look, I've done these businesses and things like that," the reason you started the company was, "Hey, I've seen it from so many different angles, and I feel like I've got good advice. I can give, I can give as much input as here and there." So that's, I mean, I think that sounds like what the impetus was for getting the business started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What ironically in the last company I helped grow in 2017, the owners determined it was time to get out of that particular industry in the wireless retail venue. And when we sold the company, um, the it couldn't have been better timing. Because within 2 years after that, the company that we represented, the dealer that we were a dealer for T-Mobile at that time, and the company that acquired us was forced to go through like a 10% location reduction on a national scale. So I think they had upwards of 600 stores after they acquired us. We were one of the final acquisitions they made. And 2 years later, they were forced into a 10% reduction in all their stores. Fast forward another year, 2 years after that, COVID hits, and they another 10% reduction, and then in 2023 another 10% reduction.
Mm.
So the irony of the timing on that couldn't have been any better because we sold at the peak of the opportunity. I give all the credit to the CEO that chose to Ty Hiner, my one of my mentors, and when we chose to do that, it was like, oh well, that was great because it was a nice payday and fun things like that. But it was like, well, now what do I do? and so
Yeah.
to your point, it was like I'm reflecting on that scenario, and I'm like, oh, this has been a nice ride, but I had actually intended to stay with the company that acquired us, but I quickly identified that I was not going to be a right culture fit, and so they agreed with that that and they decided to exit me. And when they did that, they invoked my non-compete clause. So now I'm forced out of the industry that I was familiar with for 25 years. And so to that point, it was kind of like, well, no, now what do I do? And that's kind of what led me to this path. I had already identified probably about 3 or 4 years earlier before selling that I was going to look for a second career. And I had become a life coach. I'd gotten certified by Jack Canfield, the writer for Chicken Soup for the Soul. He also wrote a book called The Success Principles, and I got certified in the Success Principles as a life coach. And I really appreciated the personal growth development part of coaching people. And so I was kind of on that path. And then ironically in, I think it was like, it was 2015, I was having a conversation with a brand expert, and I was getting ready to write my first book. And we were having a conversation about my branding, and she stops me mid conversation and she goes, Eric, why do you want to be a life coach? And so I explained to her, I love working with these younger people, helping do the personal development and the growth and everything like that. And she's like, I hear all of that, but you're just so analytical, and you have a way to break business down for people to make it really practical and easier for them to understand. She goes, I really think you'd be better off as a business coach. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. And basically ignored the advice. 4 years later, it resonated with me. And in 2019, that's when I founded Mybizcoaches. But, coaching's always been, from a leadership perspective, has always been one of my passions. I spent a ton of my own money and time developing my skills as a coach and becoming better at becoming a better leader. So I invested a lot of time and energy into doing that. That transfers over into as a business coach, obviously, not just from a helping people through the challenges, but what I've learned both. I was probably familiar with it, but I learned it more specifically since I become a business coach in the last 6.5 years, is that there is no disassociation. There's not, here's your personal life and here's your business life. Right. And the more that I help people with their businesses, I realize that actually a lot of the challenges that are often, particularly the smaller companies, specifically founder-led companies, what we find is the issue that exists in the business is an extension of a challenge that the owner is dealing with. Right, whether that's a skill set that they're not as polished on, or whatever the case may be, but that's where we identify the gaps are. So all that time that I spent developing my life coaching skills has really transferred well into the business coaching space, because it helps me help them identify often where those gaps and opportunities are.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because in talking to people these days, I get, some people get into their own business because they're great salespeople. Some get into business because they're great technologists. Some get into whatever. There's different reasons. And then I'm asking to validate this, but what I'm seeing is, like trying to help people bring all of those components together, or surround themselves by people that can help them fill in those gaps. Is that kind of directionally accurate?
Absolutely, yes. As a matter of fact, in my new book, the CEO's Playbook for Scale, what I do is I outline what I call the 7 core competencies. And of those 7 core competencies, what we've and we have 141 clients over the last 6.5 years, and what I've identified in every one of those scenarios is we have 2 or 3 of those core competencies that we pretty well wired in on. The balance of them are completely oblivious to in many cases, and we need the team to support us and shore up those uh, missed opportunities, or not really missed opportunities, but a line of sight. Right, I don't have My background may not be in finance, for instance, and I really need somebody who's strong in that area to really kind of move that business so we don't get stuck there.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I was gonna, you mentioned the book earlier. Let's not forget, keep me honest, to promote that at the end, because I
I
did
appreciate
see in
that.
your LinkedIn and stuff like that. It sounds like it's out now, so we'll talk about that at the end. Um, so general direction, kind of like I ask people this, and you've got a very different perspective on this, but somebody sitting at home right now in a corporate career saying, "I think I should start my own business." So what are the two or three like things that they should think about? The words of wisdom, advice. I mean, just thoughts around that. And I know you'd bring a different perspective. Often I'm speaking to like one-on-one business owners, so I'm very curious.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, almost tongue in cheek, I would say, don't.
You're the second person who said that, by the way. So.
Yeah, I would say, and it's it's ironic that because like I said, I have the added advantage of when I built many of my businesses, even acquired some of the business I acquired, I had a full time job and an income. Now I was younger and had the energy to do that. Certainly, over the age of 50, I don't highly recommend trying to do that and split yourself in two because it just doesn't work as well. Um, but more specifically, I think that the what you have to reflect on, and here's what I also believe. This is a little bit more overarching as it relates to where the place that we're at today in the business world and our economy and things like that. I think we're going to see more and more displaced 50-year-olds that are can't find work. I couldn't find work. I couldn't find meaningful work that people were willing to pay me what I thought I was worth, which forced me into starting my own business. And I'm not going to be surprised that we don't see quite a few more people get pushed into that on a percentage basis. I won't be surprised if a large number of people in their late 40s and early 50s and even up to their 60s are almost pushed into that scenario where they have to go start their own thing, whether it's consulting or whatever they end up doing. And I don't mean to be the doomsayer or whatever. I see the way things are transitioning, and it doesn't surprise me. A lot of the specialized skills, AI is actually replacing or displacing some of that, and it's creating a vacuum, and it's going to have to get filled. Um, I don't want to go too much into that because I think that there's probably a good thing that's going to come out of that, which is a lot of really smart people figuring out that I'm going to have to go do something else, but that creates a lot of new innovation then. So it's not necessarily bad for us in the grand scheme of things, but in the short term, it's going to be disappointing. It's going to be challenging. And for those individuals that you pointed out that are, sitting in a corporate environment saying, I'm sick of my boss, I'm frustrated with my company, I'm, whatever those things are that are kind of leaning them to think that way. Or I just like to test it. I like to try it. It's hard, right? When I say don't do it, I mean, it's legitimately, it's hard. And there's a lot to go into that. And if I could give you any advice, and this is not me just trying to sell my services, but work with a coach, work with somebody who's done it and get some feedback from them. Because before you jump out and you do that, there's an opportunity for you to kind of put your foot in the water a little bit before you jump all in. At some point, you'll have to jump all in if you really want your business to grow and become meaningful. But the challenge, I think, is you don't know what you don't know. And anybody who works with business owners on a regular basis will tell you that of most business owners. And it won't get any easier to learn those things once you're in the business. So your best opportunity is while you still have the comfort of being in a job, or take advantage of whatever opportunities that might be created being at that job. Do your due diligence, do some research, figure out what makes sense for you and your business, and identify who are some people that you could really lean on that could help coach you through that process, because it's not easy and it's definitely not something you do alone. And anybody who tells you they built their business on their own is either forgot or they're lying.
And that's actually it's another interesting comment that you make there, in the sense that looking at people jumping into these businesses, and somebody, when I was evaluating what I wanted to do, of course, I spoke to some people, selling business concepts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
One guy, a couple of people was like, you work 2 hours a day and make $500,000. I'm like, you know what? Let me just say this: BS. It's
Right.
like, and by the way, it's not even that. Maybe it's a sales model to a different generation, but that doesn't resonate with me because I'm not afraid of the work. So
Right.
and I'm willing to put it in, and I'm with you. It's working in corporate America and driving. I mean, worked really really hard, traveled a lot, but I find myself at this desk longer than I've ever sat at this desk doing this for myself than I
Exactly.
ever had. And but at the same time, what I love about it is and maybe this becomes a question too, is have an inquiring mind. You've got to
Learning.
keep asking questions
Yeah.
and learning, whether it's from a coach, whether it's from ChatGPT, whether it's whatever
Yeah.
it is. Just get advice, and I think it resonates with, you don't know what you don't know, and you just take the input. And it's like anything in the world, you give your children advice, right? Sometimes they take, but hey, this is just advice. You do with it what you like, but it's advice. And so maybe the question becomes directionally accurate again, kind of what you're seeing from people.
Yeah. It's funny. You referenced the children and giving them advice, right? I have the unique perspective of being a stepfather. And for the first 15 years of my relationship with my wife and helping raise those children, my children today, I felt like I was banging my head against the wall and making zero progress, like many parents probably do. But I have the added disadvantage of being a stepfather, and in many cases, for those who are familiar with that, it's very, it's not a very, you don't feel very appreciated very often, if ever. And ironically, it took many years of me trying to not be their father, but be the a good stepfather, basically. And I had a unique experience, so I had a lot of bad examples to look at and reflect on, and at least no, don't do it that way, right? But with that said, my children actually changed their last name to my last name about 10 years ago. And that was their indictment that I am their father as far as they're concerned, and so great, and I'm excited by that. But I share that because if there's anybody who's an objective opinion in a scenario like that, it's often the step parent. If they truly love the children, right? But they're also not so emotionally attached that they're misguided in their not coaching, but their advice that they provide. And so, ironically, as a business owner, I see it the same way, right? The advantage that I bring a business owner in helping provide them guidance and insight about what they might do or how they might do or how their business might go or what business they should even do or whatever that case may be. The reason I believe that I'm helpful is because I don't have skin in the game, in the sense that it's not my baby. Like I literally use this analogy with owners. I'm like, look, I can tell you the baby's ugly, and I it doesn't bother me to say that because I see an ugly baby. That sounds horrendously bad for some people, right? But if it's your business, that's the last thing you want to hear. But unfortunately, it's likely the one thing you need to hear to know what to do. And so if, Greg, if you and I were having a conversation, you say, hey, what business do you think I'd get into? We'd go through a series of conversations. And at the end of that, I'd say, based on your skill sets, based on what you're good at, here's some areas that I'd encourage you to focus on. You've got this experience here and this experience here, and I think that this would really align for you. And I think that if people chose to do that and actively employ those types of people that would give them that honest feedback, because that's the biggest challenge I have with most clients is um, if they truly want the honest feedback, then it's a great relationship. It's the clients that come to me and say, I want you to help me fix my business, but they don't want to be told they're wrong. It's a short-lived conversation because, quite honestly, I can't do anything for somebody who won't listen.
Yep.
And that's where I think any coach that is coached can reflect on, if not at least a couple, maybe as many as half of them, their coaching relationships. That's part of the challenge, is that the owner doesn't want to hear that they're making mistakes or they're wrong or that they need to change in some cases. So
Yeah.
I think that you mentioned about wanting to learn and continue to develop and get asked for, get questions answered and things like that. I think that person is the person that's the most likely to be successful, because they're not deterred by challenges. Because that's the other thing. I have to share this. We see it all the time on LinkedIn. They'll show it's like a little graph, right? And you got the left thing, and the line goes from the bottom left to the top right, and how everybody thinks your business goes. Kind of like the guy that you don't do
Yes.
anything and you work 2 hours a week and you make lots of
Yeah.
money. And then you have the frame right next to it. It has the same thing, but it's like a squiggly line that goes back and forth and up and down and back, all over the way. And that's what an entrepreneur's life really looks like, right? This is what people think it is. This is what it's really like. If you can look at that and you can appreciate the analogy there, then you can say that you're okay with that. I can tell you right now, you're not, because when you go through it, it's still tough. But at least if you can identify that it's not going to be easy, the likelihood of success is greatly improved.
Yeah, that's interesting. So two things I'll validate. I'll tell you the quick story about. So I grew up in a house of boys. I have my own children, but my daughter and my wife were having that life 13, 14-year-old issue.
Yeah,
And I was like, how
I
am I
know
going
it
to
well.
solve this? How am I going to solve this? How am I going to solve this? And I sat down and I took her down one day and I said to her, okay, honey, here's the deal. I've lived in a house of boys. I don't know how to deal with teenage girls. And she said, what do you mean? I said, you're mean. You do. And she goes, Dad, you have no idea. I didn't realize that when I see my friends and the way they speak to their parents, I feel like I'm doing better. I'm like, well, if you think you're doing better, you're not. And so it helped me get inside their head and take that advice from a 13-year-old
Yes.
at the time. So, and then the second piece is to validate what you said. I stepped out of a situation not that long ago where somebody had a business that was running at 10, $12 million and I want to be a $50 million business. So, well, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. Like, no, I want to keep doing what I'm doing right now. I want to do all the old things I'm doing. I just want more. I was like, sorry, buddy, that's not how it works.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was Malcolm Gladwell. What got you here won't get you there. And it was more from a career perspective, is identifying if this is where you're at in your career and you want to get to the next level, these are the things you need to do. And just identifying that the skill set that got you from, let's say, sales rep to store manager to director, each one of those evolutional changes for yourself required you to grow in a way to develop new skills that you didn't have before, or at least needed to be fine-tuned and taken to the next level.
Yeah.
Then to go from a director to an executive, at least for me personally, was yet another leap of change. And it required me to adapt and learn. That's why I spent so much time and money on myself developing. And the irony of that whole scenario is it's the same thing in the business cycles, right? In the phases of business scale. What makes you successful in the first and second phases, where it's what I call creator and hustle. Creator phase is 0 to 100,000 and 100 to 250 is the hustle phase. It's all about what you can do. When you go from 250 to 500,000, you now need systems and you need processes. So you have to have the discipline operationally to tie those things together. And then you go from 500,000 to 1,000,000, and those are like moonshot differences between what you're responsible for, because now you're managing through people.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not about what you can do, it's about what you can teach them to do. And that's where most people stall out and fail. And that's why so few actually make it to $1 million, because they can never get to that point where they learn to delegate. They just want to keep doing it the way they've been doing it.
Yeah, that's
It's
a
easier.
really good comments there, because that's kind of the conversation that takes you to the it's been a common theme in people that I've interviewed up until now, which is also, and I think this is what you're validating, is surround yourself. We talked about getting advice and we talked about all of these things, but surround yourself with smart people, by smart people. But also, if think you're the smartest person in the room, you're doing it all wrong. That
Yeah.
I'm sure you see that a lot too.
Yeah. If you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Get up and leave and go to another room, because
Yeah.
you need that. That's probably one of the things that I learned early on about being a coach that I really provided was the objective perspective. Right. And then the other thing that I realized was and it's funny because I didn't see it the first year or two that I was coaching, but the more that I worked with some bigger companies, I started realizing, and they're bigger relative to, some of the clients that I work with are even solopreneurs in some cases. But the irony is I identified I would sit with, let's say, for instance, you, Greg, and we're having a conversation and we discuss what's going on in your business and everything. And I would think, well, when I was at Express, which is that company I worked with, the last one that we sold, we had a CFO, we had a COO, we had a CEO, we had the executive director of training, I had three other executive directors of sales, and we were all on a board, so to speak. We were on a board in the sense, but whenever we made important decisions for the company, we all reflected upon, and we all had different skill sets and background and training and insights and perspective. So we make a decision, we all relied on one another to bounce these ideas off of. The average small business owner, if they're talking to anybody, they're talking to one of two people. It's either an employee that they likely aren't getting the best insider perspective from, or they're talking to their spouse, which neither one of those are necessarily ideal. Right? And I assume that the spouse isn't involved in the business. If the spouse is involved in the business, and yes, she should be involved, but he or she would be involved. But the problem is that in that particular case, it's a jaded perspective. You need somebody who's a little less removed or a little more removed from what goes on in the day to day to really help you identify and help you see things.
Yeah. No, that's again a very interesting comments. So kind of taking your business right now and looking at, so you've been in business for some time now. What's your customer acquisition model? Well, how do you find people, and just your general marketing sales approach to attracting new business?
Yeah. So, well, and I would say that 80%, at least 70, has come from referrals, and those types of relationships, networking, things like that. The next portion of it came from, it was about almost 4 years ago now. Actually, this summer will be 4 years. This June will be 4 years. I started actively promoting on LinkedIn, and I say promoting, but the creator model, like content and putting content out there, and establishing my brand and who we were and what we were doing. And then it was mostly me. But the identifying that people were going to LinkedIn specifically to research who we were, what we are, what we do, and all that kind of stuff. That was really important to help, for me, really kind of forced me to kind of bring my ideas together and get clear on what my ideas were and what I was doing. Because the first couple of years were also during COVID, so it was kind of jumbled, so to speak, let's say. But it's been the putting the content out there, which was a slow play, very slow play for reference sake. It took me 6 months before really even identified that people were paying attention to what I was saying. It took another 6 months before I saw my first lead generated from the content. Now, part of that was I needed to get better at being on social media and stuff like that. And then it took probably a year and a half before I got my first client that way. Slow play for sure, but now I will tell you that I'm saying it's 70% from referrals and networking. A good portion of the 30% is from online now, specifically LinkedIn, and that's mostly it's people identifying, reading articles, and saying, "Hey, I want to learn more. Tell me about this." And the biggest mistake that I made in doing that was I wasn't 100% certain as a business coach what my message was to really clearly identify the problem I solved for people. And that really didn't come together until I started formulating the idea of the book. And then things started coming into place better and better, because and at that point, I'd probably had like 50 clients. I'd seen enough of the same things over and over that really kind of brought that all together. But that's the social media component of it's been significant in the last 2 years, and even more so in the last year. But that was a very slow slog. There's days I felt like I was walking in 6 feet of snow without snowshoes. It was tough sometimes. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
but that's the background. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But that's the background for what we're doing moving forward, and how we're doing it through LinkedIn outreach. And we'll probably look at some pay-per-click at the end of this year.
okay. No, that's yeah. I mean, I think that's everything. Every business is different, and every model requires some finesse or whatever it is. And your target market. Interestingly enough, that you mentioned too, is I just went to an event where some, and again, I'm telling you stuff, but just for the audience is learning this, the hook that you have, and do your 30-second elevator pitch. And when somebody asks what you do, I'm like, "Yeah, this," and I was like, no, like, do this, have your hook, have your, and I've been practicing that, and I've been to a couple of networking events, and I've
The
seen the
difference.
difference in how
Yeah,
people resonate as to oppose. And I'm not like, I was with one the other day, and this lady was like, "Well, I sell houses, and and then I work with mortgage companies." And I'm like, "Yeah, you and everybody else. Like, how do you differentiate yourself?" And I think what
exactly.
you were saying is exactly that. It's, there's so much on LinkedIn. There's so much noise on LinkedIn. There are techniques to being able to make it much more successful for you. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that was definitely a factor. Yeah, to your point, Greg, it was, as much as when I would engage with a client, it was like, if somebody says, the hardest thing I had to do for after the first 2 years or so was somebody would say, what do you do? And I'd say, I'm a business coach. And they automatically assume that they think they know what that means. And what I realized was after meeting other business coaches, I'm like, oh, well, you don't do anything close to what I do.
yeah, yeah.
and because you have like, for instance, you have the EOS implementers, right? And you have the people that are action coaches and growth coaches, and all of them have different perspectives on how they go about approaching whatever challenges or problems that they're helping solve for a client. And I remember at one point I was really frustrated, and I said to somebody, it was actually in a networking group. It's in my mastermind networking group, and there's 16 people in the group. Same 16 people. We see each other every week, and we kind of share business and blah blah blah. We go through it. And I remember saying, what I'd really like is somebody. It was like at the throughout the meeting, you would share what you're looking for. What are you trying to? And I would say, what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for a business that doesn't have problems that I can work with to help them grow and scale. Because everybody makes the assumption that you need a business coach when your business is in trouble. And I'm like, no, actually, the best time to get best time to be a business coach is before you have problems, because they help you see the potential problems that are coming before they come. And I'm like, I'd really like to meet more of those business owners. How do I find more of them?
Yeah, that's actually a good point, and I think it brings back to what we were talking about earlier. It's those points in the business that you get to, whatever the number is, 1 million, 10 million, and I think that's your point. Right? Like, if you're at this number, now's the time to talk to somebody, because you've got a lot of things in place. Let's put the things in place before it becomes a problem to get you from this number to this number.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is very enlightening. I love the conversation. Let's do a couple of things. Tell us about the book again. Tell us where people can find you, LinkedIn, and about your, the website and that type of stuff.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Yeah. So the book is called The CEO's Playbook for Scale. It will actually launch on March, the first Tuesday in March. Sorry, I can't remember the actual date. The first Tuesday in March. So it's a couple weeks out. We're actually going through final edits right now, so I'm all excited about that. The launch. You'll actually start seeing it on LinkedIn. So I'm very prevalent on LinkedIn with both my personal brand, Eric Whitmoyer, and then the business brand, Mybizcoaches. So you'll see it on there. And you can go to our website, which is mybizcoaches.com. You'll be able to get it there as well. But it'll be on Amazon. Excited to launch it. Quick rundown. It basically goes through what I have identified as what I call the 7 core competencies, and I helps people identify where, based on the skill sets that we have, the life experiences we've had, that kind of determines which of those skill sets we are most in tune with or comfortable with, and then helps you identify the ones you aren't as strong at. There'll actually be an app that will launch shortly after the book that will help. It'll be like a survey solution, and it'll help you identify the gaps that you have in your business, and where you could use some help. And so you can actually use the app, and it'll make some suggestions. So it's an LLM it's basically our LLM that supports it. And you'll from that, it'll make some recommendations, and you can identify that if you need more help implementing it, we're happy to help you do that. But so we're pretty excited about the launch. The other thing that it does is it takes those 7 core competencies and overlays it against the 8 phases of scale. Because the other thing that we've identified is all 7 of them are important, but some are way more important at different phases of your growth of scale, right? So again, if you're in the creator or hustler phase, all that matters at least in the creator phase, all that matters is that you're selling things you're finding clients and you're selling things, right? Probably executing on what you sell. Then when you go to the next phase, it's identifying, okay, well, now I need to duplicate these processes. I should be paying attention to that. And so what it does throughout the book is it helps identify, okay, well, at this phase, now you really need to lean into these things. So as you move to the executor phase and things like that, now you're getting more into the area where you want to be able to identify how to lead and grow people and get them to do the things that you used to do yourself. Now you need to get them to do it, and how that phases of growth take you all the way up to 100 million.
That's incredible. No, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I've been watching the channel on LinkedIn and things like that, and we'll make sure that I post it on mine, and then we keep promoting
Appreciate
it.
that.
So wonderful conversation, very enlightening. Every time I do one of these, you kind of have this sense of, okay, I got these questions and stuff, and they generally take it different. And I love the different perspectives that everybody has, and yours is very refreshing. So I'd really appreciate that today.
Absolutely appreciate it as well, Greg.